Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be introducing you to an organization I came to really admire while working on my research paper for this course. The organization is called CETUS Research and Conservation Society, and it's a small nonprofit based in Canada's West Coast, specifically in British Columbia, that focuses on protecting a critically endangered species, the southern resident killer whale. What stood out to me is that CETUS doesn't just raise awareness, they're actually out there on the water actively trying to reduce the direct human threats these whales face. And as I looked into their work more deeply, I started to see them as like a really effective example of how grassroots philanthropy can have a meaningful environmental impact. So today I'll walk you through the issue they're tackling, the Canadian nonprofit context they operate in, and as well as their approach and how it's both unique and effective. So, why does this matter? The orca crisis. So, let's start with why CETUS exists in the first place. The southern resident killer whales, or the orcas, live off the coast of British Columbia. There are only about 75 individuals left, and their population has been on a steady decline for years. They are important for a lot of reasons. Ecologically, they help balance the marine food chain. Culturally, they're significant to Indigenous communities in the Pacific Northwest who view them as ancestral figures. And economically, they're a major draw for ecotourism. People from all over the world come to see these whales and go on whale watching tours in Vancouver. But they are on a serious risk of extinction, and these are their main threats. First is the decline in Chinook salmon, which is their primary food source. Secondly, it's the noise pollution from the boats, which disrupts their ability to communicate and hunt. And lastly, the physical disturbances from vessel traffic, specifically having to do with the tourist boats and the large cargo ships going into Vancouver port, which increases stress and the risk of collisions. So conservationists warn that if these threats aren't addressed urgently, this entire population could disappear within the next decade. So, philanthropy and volunteering in Canada. To understand how CETUS operates, it helps to zoom out and look at Canada's broader nonprofit and philanthropic landscape. So, Canada actually has a very robust culture of civic engagement. According to recent data, over 12.7 million Canadians volunteered in 2023, contributing to an estimated 1.7 billion hours of their time, and charitable donations that year totaled around $11 billion, with environmental causes gaining particular traction. There's a growing sense among Canadian donors that climate change and conservation are urgent. As a result, more support is going towards organizations working in these areas. The country also has a solid infrastructure in place to support volunteering. National platforms like Volunteer Canada and the federal government's volunteer portal make it easier to find for people to find organizations aligned with their values. So nonprofits like CETUS, they're operating in a context that's generally supportive of civic engagement and environmental action, which really helps amplify their mission. Legal and institutional environment. From a legal and institutional perspective, Canada gives nonprofits a lot of flexibility. Organizations can register at the federal or provincial level, and both structures are tax exempt. That said, there's an important distinction between registered charities and nonprofit organizations. Only registered charities can issue tax-deductible receipts, and they're held to a higher standard for financial reporting. CETUS operates as a nonprofit, which gives them more autonomy but limits some fundraising options. So one major challenge across the board is funding instability. With inflation and economic uncertainty rising, many smaller nonprofits, including CETUS, are feeling financial pressure. They rely heavily on individual donations and grants, and these sources aren't always predictable. So while the legal landscape is relatively nonprofit friendly, there are real economic constraints that organizations like CETUS have to navigate. So their mission and programs. CETUS was founded in response to the growing risks of extinction facing these whales. Their mission is focused and practical, reduce human-caused threats, especially those from boats. Their most well-known initiative is the Strait Watch program. This is a field-based program where trained observers go out onto the water, monitor vessel activity, and directly educate boaters on how to reduce their impact near whale habitats. They don't just hand out pamphlets, they have conversations with boaters in real time. They explain how the noise interferes with orca communication and encourage people to follow marine mammal guidelines. So CETUS also offers educational workshops in schools and communities aimed at fostering long-term awareness and responsibility for ocean conservation. What I find particularly compelling is how hands-on and localized their work is. It's not a top-down policy, it's practical daily engagement with people who are actually out there on the water. So their partners and collaborators, even though CETUS is small, they've been able to expand their reach through strategic partnerships. They work with government bodies like Fisheries and Oceans Canada and BC Parks, which helps connect their fieldwork to broader conservation goals. These partnerships don't just add credibility, they actually create channels for funding and policy alignment. In the private sector, they've partnered with companies like Patagonia, which promotes their work and supports them through its Action Works program. Another partner is Orca Spirit Adventures, a local whale watching company that provides them both with funding and volunteer resources. This is a smart match since ecotourism and whale protection clearly go hand in hand. They've also been recognized by OceanWise, a larger conservation organization which helps raise their profile even more. So while CETUS doesn't have a huge media presence, they've built a strong network that multiplies their impact and keeps them connected to both local and national conservation efforts. So would I volunteer for CETUS? I chose CETUS partly because I had already a personal connection to the issue. Back at my home in university, I interviewed students who made a documentary about the decline of killer whales in British Columbia. That experience really opened my eyes to how deeply human activity like vessel noise affects the marine species. And when I came across CETUS during my research project, their work immediately stood out to me. It's field-based, community-oriented, and focused in that direct action. They don't just ask people to care about orcas, they give them practical tools to actually make a difference. They also promote volunteerism and civic responsibility, which are values I really identify with. And they don't just publish full financials. They're transparent about programs, partnerships, and team members builds trust in different but still meaningful ways. I came away from this research feeling that CETUS is exactly the kind of organization I'd support as a donor, and I definitely would like to volunteer for them one day. So to conclude, I think the CETUS Research and Conservation Society offers a really powerful example of what a small grassroots organization can do to fight to protect the oceans. They operate within limited resources, but their work is clear, targeted, and supported by a strong network of collaborators. They bring together government, private companies, and the public in a way that feels integrated rather than fragmented. In a time where climate anxiety can feel a little overwhelming, CETUS offers a hopeful model, one where everyday actions like slowing down a boat or teaching a classroom of kids about whales can actually help turn the tide a bit. So if there's one takeaway I hope you leave with is that marine conservation doesn't just belong to scientists or big institutions. It's something that starts locally with organizations like CETUS and with people like us who choose to support them. Thank you.